Welcome to Kibbe on Liberty. The world is on fire this week, and I wanted to bring my friend Maj Toure, founder of Black Guns Matter, on the program to talk about what's going on. Maj, you just got back from Minneapolis, and you were in Tulsa. What's going on?
What's going on is the uprising of a lot of frustrated Americans that are starting to recognize what government overreach looks like. I think that a lot of times, you know how like in the gun community, for decades, we've been like, man, they're coming to take our guns. And people are like, man, there's no way anybody's coming to take your guns. That's not happening. And so, you know, then fast forward and then you got guys like Beto saying, hell yeah, we're coming to take your guns. And then it looks much more clearer. This government overreach in the form of the corona pandemic and things of that nature has shown to people, you know, that they will overreach, as well as it showed a lot of police officers that it's just like, okay, guys, you guys are on your own, which is completely fine by me. I gotta, you know, I'm armed, but what's happening is government could not create more of a layup for liberty than they're doing right now because people are not distracted. They're not at work all of the time, and they're seeing their back-to-back mistakes or bad choices. So that's what's happening around the country. And I think there's different layers of people involved in that. There's actual people protesting at the top tier, fighting against government overreach. There's paid agitators in the middle to kind of like deflect from the overall thing and use it for their political purpose. And at the bottom of it, it's like young, white, black, Asian, Spanish teenagers that just want to loot stores and get like LeBron James sneakers. You know what I'm saying? So that's what is the general feel around the country as I've been traveling around doing the Black Guns Matter firearms classes.
I know you've been critical almost from day one of the government-imposed quarantines and all of the economic devastation. I feel like that was the first of a 1-2 punch, creating this tinderbox where people are just frustrated, they're pissed, they're depressed, they're unemployed. I mean, George Floyd lost his job because the Minnesota governor locked down the economy. These two things are very much related to each other.
Yeah, they're related. Not bigger than that, Matt. They symbiotic. Like, it ain't even like just in close proximity. It's like 1 + 1 gets you 2. It's no different than poverty in certain areas. And I don't care what neighborhood you identify as. If you're hungry, you gotta eat. That's like primal. You know what I'm saying? And so these things are going in that direction for these reasons. And, you know, and like you said, I was very critical from the very beginning. The model that we got was based on predictions. Models is predictions when you don't have any data, like no science, you know, and the guy that started that in essence was based it and said, listen, if we do nothing, this is what could happen. But who would not do anything? Media, other, you know, left and right people ran with that for their own political purposes. And then they, in essence, cities, states, and federal governments locked down our entire country. So now we're looking at depression rates and suicide rates going up. We're looking at domestic fights and abuses going up. You know, these are 1-2 punches that are symbiotic in their relationship. So with me saying like, yo, safety, like all atrocities start with like, oh, this is for your safety. We as the government are doing this for your safety. I have the right as a free individual to determine my level of safety. I don't need the government to do that for me. Okay. I haven't worn a mask this entire time. Scientifically, those masks do not work for the thing that you're talking about. So all of this, you know, the social distancing, this, that, and the third, listen, humanity has existed for hundreds of thousands of years. You know, comets have hit the planet. You know, we've had, you know, earthquakes and seismic shifts and all of these different things. This is what happens. People overly depend on safety when in reality, safety's third. You know, it's like life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness and or property. It's like life, like living, like not like scared and like being locked in the house, like living and like living your best life. Then recognizing what dangers are there and then mitigating those dangers based on your choices, right? And then that's where you get to safety, like not being a slave. Safety's third. When I take a plane is very, very dangerous. We've accepted it as safe, but it's like 30,000 feet in the air with jet fuel. Like, it's not safe. We've mitigated that certain level of safety by, you know, safety belts and this, that, and the third. So my point there is, I was critical of that from the very beginning because I know what government does. It doesn't make anything. It doesn't make things safer. You know, the free market does that. And I don't need the government to tell me what I have to wear on my face or how far I need to stand away from somebody when the logic just doesn't even make sense. Like I'm standing 6 feet away from somebody vertically, but I'm right next to the person at the ATM next to me horizontally. Like the virus doesn't do lateral movement like that. Like it doesn't make sense, you know? So I was critical. And as usually I am, this is going to sound very, very pat yourself on the backish and very, very arrogant, as I normally am, because I think and I look backwards, I was right. You know, there's been massive government overreach. You pent people up in the crib for a long time. You force them to, in essence, not have, you know, the means to make money, and they're frustrated. So, like, what did you expect? You wanted people to come outside like holding hands or like wearing masks and like air high fiving and being happy? Like, no, you destroyed people's way of life, and you, in essence, told millions upon millions of Americans that the way that they feed their family is not essential, and that is government overreach. If I don't know what it is, now I do.
Hey, I want to talk about the Tulsa Massacre that you were reminding people of when you were there last weekend. But I'm thinking a little bit about all of the Karens that, and I watched them scold you online for saying weeks and even months ago what you just said, and those same people, particularly public health officials, are now sort of rationalizing that protesting is different than going out and buying a sandwich and engaging in peaceful commerce with your shop down the street. What do you have to say to them?
These people, right? Sorry, guys, if that sounds racist to my white friends, because it's mostly Karens, it's mostly white liberals. I'm sorry, guys. I love y'all all, but you know, it's just what it is. My white liberal friends, they give this virus so much intelligence. They give it so much smarts. It's like the virus knew to like, wait a minute, guys. Like collectively, Corona and COVID-19 said, hey, guys, we're gonna take a knee for the protests because these massive amounts of people that we normally would gobble up, right? We're gonna chill. So, you know, it's like the gun-free zone sign. It's like the criminal goes, wait a minute, guys, we can't shoot it up in here. It's just funny, and it's a contradiction. I would much rather them say, hey guys, we were scared, we thought this was unprecedented, we jumped the gun, we were wrong, let's adapt and move forward. Or, hey, certain areas are hit harder than others. You know, New York, Miami, California were hit harder based on dense population, so forth and so on. Areas that, you know, that are already, you know, spread out, they don't have the same threat or have not had the same outcome. But that's too much like right. It's too much like right for the government as well as the people that were afraid by that to just, you know, retract the statement. Even wrong journalists retract the statement. Maybe not with the same, you know, passion that they were yelling at you. The Karens that were yelling at me on Twitter, I'm like, bro, your mask is a cloth piece, like it's porous. That's not, you don't have any eye protection on. Like it's a droplet scenario. It gets into your mucous membranes. It's like your nose, your eyes. Like, come on, guys. Like let's think. And they're never gonna admit fully that you were right. But what they will do, and I'll take it, what they will do is they'll be quiet for the next 10 years based on, you know, the police leaving, the corona thing. No one, I should hear nothing from any of those Karens about gun control. When you say, well, just call the police literally left. And we have point of references of showing that. So that's the silver lining that I got out of it. But now more and more people are seeing, we're not seeing spikes. There's been Philly, you know, we had thousands of people protesting as recently as Saturday over the last few weeks or so. And we're not seeing massive amounts of people going into hospitals. We're actually seeing the opposite. We're seeing, you know, restrictions being lifted. We're seeing people come out. We're seeing businesses open. And that's the direction that, you know, we need. So it's like arguing with your lady, you know, just when she's quiet about it and not really yelling at you, just take the knee. You're in the lead. Take the knee, run the clock out. And that's what I'm going to do with this one.
I can unfortunately relate to that advice. That the strategy, it's the reason I'm still sitting here. Let's pivot to, and I want to talk about defunding the police, and I want to talk about structural racism, because I think we libertarians actually have some substantial ways of limiting police abuse and police power. But let's remind people a little bit of the history. That's a lot of what you've done with Black Lives Matter. Why were you in Tulsa?
I was in Tulsa because it was the 99th year anniversary of the Black Wall Street Tulsa race riots. Black Wall Street, which it was affectionately named, was, you know, tons of businesses owned by melanated beings in this part of Tulsa, Oklahoma. There was a rumor that one of the African-American men from that neighborhood made a sexual gesture towards a white woman. White citizens grabbed the guy. The men from the community go over and like, yo, you can't like take our guy. And so it goes back and forth. And that entire community of businesses was destroyed. It was burned down. The fire department that was brought there stayed there and allowed it to be burned. The part of the story that generally doesn't get told, though, because I think that goes in alignment with the victim narrative, the part that it is empowering is Black Wall Street was rebuilt and was there for about 35, 40 years after. But the reason for me going there on that specific day, I'm in the numerology, 9 and 9. Did you know that 9 is like the highest number? Like when you get to 9, you actually just kind of like start over again. But anyway, that's a whole nother thing. The 99th anniversary or something like that, I could only think that those businesses and those Americans would have prospered and grew even more exponentially if they were armed, if they had the means to defend their life. And so for me, instead of complaining about what was destroyed, we highlight what happened. It's a part of our history in America. We highlight, you know, the rebuild, and we also present a solution. You know, it's like the Sankofa bird. You look to the past to, you know, kind of like get your bearings on what you want to move better and do better in the future. So we went there. We did a free fire, as we do with all our events, a free firearm safety and training class for anyone that signed up. I'm trying to keep the classes under 100 people because it's much more difficult to have 400 people at a firearm safety class, you know, depending on the space and all those other different things. But the class went great, man. We had a great outdoor range. We partnered with, and this class would not have gotten done so smoothly if it wasn't for the folks over at United States Shooting Academy and Diana Muller, who is a 3-gun competition shooter. She's 22 years retired law enforcement. She was law enforcement in Tulsa for 22 years. And, you know, she saw the friction. She saw the, hey, Maj, as a retired law enforcement officer, I can't necessarily reach your demographic the way that you can. So we partnered up together. We had great instructors to come be a part of it. NLT Cert Pistol gave us, you know, all of our Cert Pistols for the class. Shouts to Phoenix Ammo. Shouts to Fiocchi Ammo. They donated the ammo. Again, shouts to USSA, United States Shooting Academy. Great spot. If you're in Tulsa, you should check it out. But that's what we were there for, to make sure that we're informing people about their human and natural right. These are human rights. The Bill of Rights are rights that are your birthrights, right? And just to remind people, especially from that demographic on that day, which was very fitting, about your human right to keep and bear arms to defend your life if need be. And there's no clearer example that you could give of over 6,000 businesses being burned down because at the time, you know, those Americans did not have thought that they did not have the means to defend their lives. So it was a great class.
And you then took that message, because I was talking to you that day, and you packed up and got to Minneapolis because that same message of the police are not going to defend you. You have to take that individual responsibility to defend yourself. Is that basically it?
Absolutely. And it was yet another, you know, unfortunately, George Floyd was murdered. And I want to say this, I'm a conspiracy theorist to a degree, right? I theorize about people conspiring to do a thing. That doesn't make you crazy. That doesn't make you tinfoil hat. The rumor, I don't know if it's actually accurate, but the rumor is that the term conspiracy theorist was created by the CIA to make critical thinkers look crazy. But regardless or not, I've heard a bunch of different stories about George Floyd. Oh, he was a Mason. They faked his death. Blah, 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 blah. Listen, maybe that's the case. I don't have any information to support those claims. So I do know that, you know, George Floyd was an American that, based on what we know, was murdered by law enforcement, you know, for potentially a $20 counterfeit bill. I've seen so many socialists and statists posing as conservatives and liberty-based folk try to make this about assassinating his character as opposed to an American being killed by a law enforcement officer that had about 17 infractions on his jacket. You know, And it's just ironic to me that we would try to, and this happens often, we try to criminalize or character assassinate the person killed by the state, but we don't want to look at the state's actions or those individual, members of or workers for the state. So I just want to make sure that people understand that. So there's no other more clear-cut example. And it was annoying to me kind of because 2 years ago, I had to go to Minneapolis, St. Paul to do a class after the Philando Castile verdict happened. I knew tensions would be high, just like tensions were high there. So what we did was we did an on the ground in the street firearm safety and training class. We took huge shouts to NLT Cert Pistols, next level training cert. Yes, that's a plug. No, they don't pay me. But they gave us a bunch of these amazing guns that are like $200 and $300 a piece. And what happened was we had, in essence, on the street class. I mean, completely beginner people that on one hand, you're saying this is wrong and you're right, it's wrong. But on the other hand, because a lot of those people were liberal, they're in essence saying, let's get the guns off the street. So you're putting more of a monopoly of violence in the hands of the state, which is a contradiction. And so, and explaining it to the people from on the ground with them, and then giving them something for free, the message was received extremely well. It was just a ton of people, and it was beautiful because we had some people. Our classes are comfortable. You can you can challenge me with questions. You can say, well, guns are bad. Well, no, actually not really. The areas that have more responsible gun ownership have lower violent crime. That's not like my feelings about it. That's like data. That's like FBI stats. Dr. John Lott did a great book from a while ago called More Guns, Less Crime, where he chronicled this very well. So I thought it would only be right and supportive to make sure that we made ourselves available to people, especially on the ground zero level, to people that wanted to get some of that information and training and kind of shift hearts and minds around that. A law enforcement officer's job, their job description or the uniform that they wear does not give them the license to kill you as an American. It does not. And if any uniform, I don't care if it's a post office dude, if they try to kill me, I'm going to kill them. That's it. That there's no, I have the right to exist on these lands, and pursue my life, my liberty, and my pursuit of property, and happiness too. I'm happy regardless, but I want to continue to pursue that, and just giving people that empowering message right on the street with 20 or 30 cert pistols, telling them what about stance, grip, the mindset, the Second Amendment, the Bill of Rights, to people that felt like, who were erroneously taught that this is something that is outside of their right. It's just super empowering. So I lost a little bit of sleep, or a lot of sleep, but it was a sacrifice that I have no problem doing over and over and over again.
So I'm going to pick on Republicans in a minute, but I have to point out, and I know you know this, but Minneapolis is 100% run by radical, progressive Democrats. The officer that murdered George Floyd had been could have been reined in by none other than Senator Amy Klobuchar, and she refused again and again and again. And it just strikes me that there must be some fundamental link between people that believe that big government is a solution to our cities and cities that don't rein in big government when it comes to police abuse. Do these things, do they go in hand?
It's hand in hand, and on top of it being hand in hand, again, it's symbiotic. I mean, if it was like two cities, like over 2 terms, I would be like, well, you never know. But the fact that, I've been across the country from like one coast to the other. I don't even know how many times anymore. Like, I've made that cross-country trip, that long 4 or 5 hour flight. I don't, and it's not long when you travel international, but if I didn't see this in mostly democratically ran cities consistently, I would be more apt to go, well, let's be objective. It's clear. It's not even like a oops. When you talk about like the Ku Klux Klan being a democratic organization, that's not like Maj kind of feels that way about it. It's like, no, this is what this organization was. When you're talking about policies, when you're talking about Joe Biden, when you're talking about the guy that like is pandering to the black vote, telling black people, yo, bro, if you don't vote for me, you ain't black. It's like, ain't you the same dude that like created the crime bill that like locked up all of the black people, you and Big Bill, right? Aren't you the same dude that created like gun-free zones that now like over 90% of the mass shootings are in those gun-free zones? You don't got no room to talk, bro. These are like, aren't you the same guy that's been like in public office in DC for like 50 years? What were you doing the last half a century, and why didn't you give us the antidote then? Like, at what point, like, you got to be in the president's chair, bro? You was in the White House for 8 years. You didn't want to like pass off like the antidote to like Big Barry. Like, come on, bro. Like, it's just too commonplace and it's too consistent for it to be an accident. And I hate that, because I have so many friends and loved ones that lived in left cities, I live in Philly. We 80% Democrat, you know? And so just having that conversation and getting more people, even though I have some issues with the libertarian leadership, the party leadership, I think Sarwark is a fucking clown, okay? And on top of that, I urge everyone to join the Libertarian Party, not only to just, you have a viable option now. It's the third largest party in the world, and the Democrat and Republican Party have been around for hundreds of years. The Libertarian Party's only been around since like the early 70s. So you got a viable option. Not only do I want people to join, right? I also want people to reach out to your delegates and tell them you want Sarwark gone, because you want, as an urban American more specifically, you want to come into a inclusive, freedom, liberty-based, political group that isn't going to keep doing this like, it's their fault, it's my fault, it's their fault, it's their fault, it's their fault. You know, it's just about liberty, freedom, and like the thing that this whole like America was supposed to be on. So I think that people are seeing it. The silver lining from, again, this Corona COVID thing, this civil unrest, people are tired and they have different options. And it's our job to show them those different options like we can at the Libertarian Party. So I want everybody to go join, be a member. You're going to hear everybody saying, the Libertarian Party will never blah, blah, blah. Yeah, of course not with that attitude. Like, come on, dudes. You know, so I challenge everybody to do that, think different, jump outside of those boxes.
So one of the things that I worry about with Democrats, and I'm pivoting to picking on Republicans, and then we can talk about some libertarian solutions.
Okay.
That could actually deal with, I actually like the word structural racism, because the structural part is the government monopoly enforced part that empowers bad actors. So you have Democrats that, like, they're saying that they're going to defund the police. In Minneapolis, the city council has announced that they're going to do that. To me, it looks like a rebranding exercise.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly what that means, but we libertarians would have some structural ways to rein in police power and probably cut their budgets too. But, you know, Democrats are culpable for all of this. Republicans, on the other hand, they believe that government power corrupts, except when it comes to things like police and the war state. And they seem to be unwilling to acknowledge that there are bad cops. There can be racist cops. There is abusive structural problems there. And they always jump back into that camp of hashtag Blue Lives Matter without even considering sort of the facts of what happened to George Floyd.
Again, a lot of these guys, man, and I love them. I love, again, a lot of these leftists and rightists, quote unquote, rhinos, FUDs, whatever. They follow me, and I have love for them as Americans, as humans. So, and these statements that I make may offend some of my political connects, like high-level administration people and family members of the administration follow me on all of these social media platforms. So I always try to preface it from a place of empathy. Then we get to the facts, and then maybe if you stick around through empathy and facts, then we can come solutions together. The reality is, my brothers and sisters on the right, Republicans more specifically, you are being statist bootlickers. I'm sorry. Maybe that's because you have an unwarranted or media-driven fear of urban America. You know, you sound like Joe Biden on some of these statements. You sound like when Joe Biden was like, oh, we don't want to do this, the busing into the schools because we don't want our children going to like what did he say? Racial jungles. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, oh, I've heard people say, if the police aren't in your neighborhood, you guys are going to kill yourself. Yeah, so in essence, you're saying that black, brown, yellow, white people in urban demographics have a predisposition to kill ourselves if the white police department isn't there to save us from ourselves. That's the goofy, soft bigotry of low expectations. And when you say these things like my thin blue line, and you sound just like well, who's going to build my roads? It's the same thing, you know? And so we have models where there isn't, but even before you talk about defunding the police, let's just say, let's start with ending the war on drugs. Let's just do heroin and coke. Let's just do those two. Let's start with three. Let's start with heroin, coke, and weed, right? Once you saw the violent crime rates drop, there's no need for detectives and police to that degree. So the problem starts to fix itself. I think what they do is they create these overbloated scenarios and make everything a law to justify their own existence. When a lot of these guys could be in the military protecting, you know, from actual threats, like actual, not just like conflicts, like actual like wars, like, oh man, they're attacking us. Cool, we solid. We kill and destroy anybody that's actually trying to attack us. Okay, you guys violated our non-aggression principle. Now we're gonna fucking like ground you in the fucking chalk, right? I'm with that, but it needs to be justified. I want law enforcement officers to go after like robbers, rapists, and like unjustified killers. If he's only making $50,000 a year, right? And you're asking him to do a no-knock raid for a guy that's wanted for a warrant for 2 tons of weed, you're asking that man to now risk, or woman to risk his or her life for some fucking plants that Coca-Cola is about to like make trillions of dollars on with the strains, you know? So we don't even have to get to defunding the police first. We can, but let's talk about the fact that we've overbloated it, like it's what government has done. And then doing from that standpoint, you know, you give more of a quality of life for those law enforcement officers that are still there. You know, you give them more pride. You get it back to peace officer instead of law enforcement. You get it back to, how about something as simple as, hey, man, you can only be a police officer in the community that you live in. Like how we send our children to school. Hey, your child has to go to the school in the neighborhood, even though I'm a fan of school choice. However, why do police officers get that carte blanche? You know, so there's simple and practical things that the Libertarian Party and libertarians, even if they aren't in the party, have been saying about these overreaching government, too big of the state powers. We kind of have been talking about this for some time now, you know, like practically, like Cato has put out stuff on this. Like, it's not it's not rocket science. It only seems to be rocket science because you guys have overcomplicated for a very long time. We're not saying that we don't want law enforcement officers to have a quality of living. We're saying that the American people should not be controlled and patrolled every single way to justify your job. Did it violate somebody's body? Did it violate somebody's property? No? Okay, then we probably should just leave Americans alone. And it's simple. If that doesn't make the case, every dude in the hood in America is in alignment with that.
You know, there are, in fairness, there are both progressive Democrats and conservative or libertarian. I think they're more libertarian than conservative Republicans that have been very much warming up to the idea of ending the drug war. They're going to do it piecemeal. They're decriminalizing medical marijuana. They're legalizing recreational marijuana, and these are great steps in the right direction. And the idea of defunding any part of government is really attractive to me, but I'm afraid that that phrase is a way that cities like Minneapolis will get away without doing structural reforms and ending the drug wars. Number one, I'm thinking of and I think a lot of Democrats are down with that. But you know, during the lockdowns, you actually had cops enforcing the stupidest, silliest laws, going to playgrounds to arrest moms. And you know, conservatives are livid about this. Like, what the hell is that all about? It's the same story, but in different neighborhoods on different silly laws.
Right. And that's where the contradiction has to be exposed. Usually what doesn't happen. So I get love from both sides, Americans, right? And I get hate from both sides, Americans, primarily because one day you're going to love me, because if you're super attached to, let's say, the Trump administration, when I'm supportive of certain things like his funding, and I kind of, again, I'm free market, but it's like, yo, certain things, since y'all are giving money away, put it where it's going the most productive, right? Or that need it. Everybody needs it to a certain extent, or could use some help every now and then. It's a can't be a crutch though forever. My point though is, when there's criminal justice reform that's bringing little grannies home for 20 years for first-time nonviolent drug offenses, like, how are you going to hate on that because it's Trump? Like, come on, bro. Like, stop it. Or when I'm critical of Trump, that right side loves me when I'm supportive of that. But when I'm critical of him not being the best on the Second Amendment, even though he was backed by the NRA, now you want to be mad at me. So we just don't generally have someone that's willing to be objective all of the time, usually in the main sphere, because the people that are more one side over the other, I'm all the way left and the right is only wrong. I'm all the way right and the left is only wrong. Those people, they get the views, they get the followers, they get the clicks, they get all that other good stuff, right? But they're not moving America forward. They're not moving like the actual conversation or the needle forward in the direction of liberty, So I understand why they do it. I don't agree with it. I understand it. But at the same time, it's just you have to be critical. And if you're willing to be that person that's objectively critical, I don't got no picks. If you're right, you're right. You're wrong, you're wrong. White, black, Republican, Democrat. That gang tribal mentality. My tribe is cool people that's down with liberty and the Constitution. That's my tribe, right? That tribe comes in all ethnicities and hues. If you're like a statist or down with the authoritarianism, you're not my tribe, period. And so our tribalism should be restructured that way. And I do agree with you that there is a slick way. If you don't do this right, it looks like one thing, and then you may potentially open the door for the federal government to go, well, we got to step in and forget your state's rights, and we don't want that either.
Right. Well, let's talk about Justin Amash was the first member of Congress to introduce legislation to end qualified immunity.
Yeah.
I assume you support that.
Absolutely. I just found out not long ago. I forgot. Justin Amash follows me on Twitter. I swear I didn't know this for like a year. I had no idea, which tells me that, one, he's definitely shadow banned, because I did not see any of his tweets. And then when he said he was going to, look at the libertarian situation, I was like, oh, I gotta like holler at him. And I was like, oh shit, he follows me already, right? Which is dope. Yes, his position again. Where are the libertarians? Like introduced actual legislation. I bang with it. I think that we as the Libertarian Party, or libertarians, including but not limited to the party, have to get behind and support all of these men and women that have libertarian ideology that for a long time felt like, or to be quite honest, had to go to the Republican side of things because we didn't fund them properly. That's one of the areas. And it's an uphill battle. When I ran for city council as a libertarian in Philly, I got this shit beat out of me. Why? Because I had to build, and now I know, I learned a lot. However, we only raised about $60,000, $70,000, which isn't a lot. However, what we did was we got a lot of people active involved. What we have to do as libertarians, when we find an Amash, when we find a Thomas Massie, when we find a Maj Toure, everybody across the country needs to get $100 million, $100 million into their campaign efforts. $100 million each into their campaign efforts. And in doing so, then we make those guys that are already rock stars, those women that are already rock stars, we give them rock star treatment financially. Now they can rumble. Now they can get ads ain't cheap and they ain't free, and so we can impart this message to the people. And that's why I didn't leave the Libertarian Party. I didn't register as a Republican. I stepped back and everybody's like, yeah, okay, guys, we ran another one away. Nah, I'm going to stand and I'm going to rumble. I'm going to get rid of the goofies in leadership. Sarwark's got to go. He's a goofy. I'm sorry. And that's respectfully my opinion. He's a goofy. That's my opinion. Hey, listen, internet world, that's not Matt Kibbe's opinion. That's all me. Direct all of your smoke to me. You can vent at info@officialblackgunsmatter.com. You know what I'm saying? I don't have to play the political game in that regard. Which is a great thing that I want to segue into now. My job now is to register 50,000. I want to get 50,000 people from the Democratic and Republican Party in Philadelphia. Philadelphia is all I'm going to concentrate on, to switch their voters registration to libertarian. That's my goal for the rest of 2020, 2021, into 2022, when there's a new 2-year election for city council in 2 years, a year and a half now at this point. We need 50,000 registered libertarian people that identify on their voters registration card as libertarian in Philadelphia, as well as reaching out to independents. Then we can back a quality candidate again on the local level and start building up. That's what I'm going to do. That's what I didn't do last time, but I learned a lot. You know, I know where we get beat up at the polls, and this is why I'm saying, going back to, Justin Amash and, Thomas Massie. Thomas Massie's in Kentucky. He's the lone guy that stood up against, we talk about a libertarian, the lone guy that stood up against the largest wealth transfer, socialism, right, in American history. Trillions of dollars that they wanted to kind of like sweep under the rug. And President Trump got on him a bit, tried to chew his head off a little bit. Doesn't matter. Thomas Massie's a rock star. You should be donating to his campaign. You should be donating to Justin Amash. You should be donating to anybody that's for the cause of liberty. And we have to. And I know some of you Republicans that's watching, that, especially if you live in a city, that your Republican leadership has laid down. They've laid down, and it's not time to lay down anymore. We got to stand up if you actually want liberty. So absolutely, I'm in alignment with Justin Amash's legislation in regards to basically police being able to do whatever the hell they want. I'm totally in opposition to it. I'm in support of his legislation, but in opposition to that concept.
So there is this conservative argument for holding bad cops accountable. And I think at least some Republicans understand ending qualified immunity because it creates that problem for law enforcement and their credibility. But so far, no Republicans are on board with Justin Amash's legislation. The other thing is public employee unions. And if you're a Democrat and you're worried about abusive police power, you're going to have to come to terms with the fact that the number one thing that happens when a bad cop emerges is that the police union circles the wagons, and very seldom are the bad guys held accountable. But if you're going to go after one public employee union, you got to go after maybe the public employee union that protects teachers, bad teachers, and undermines good teachers. It's the same logic. And this is why I'd be skeptical that Democrats are going to be able to clean up their own house, because in order to take on police power, you have to take on government power.
The reason how we're able to beat that, though, is we got the people involved. Of course, it's like when guys say, oh, we're going to have a police, we're going to do an independent, looking into ourselves. Hey, we've investigated ourselves and we found out that we didn't do anything wrong. That's what that leads to. But when you have the people involved, this is the one good thing that has come out of all of this civil unrest, even riots and rebellions and looting, right? Because some of it's looting. One of the great things that has come out of that is America responds to money and violence. And you've affected people's money. The government did that with shutting down, businesses. But on top of that, the people express what they're on. And I'm not saying it's exactly the same thing, but you got a situation that, that Boston Tea Party. It's like, nah, we not with this. And property was damaged. And so it's not exactly similar. But at the same time, you gotta commend people for even the peaceful protesters. Even if you take a minute and you block a highway, listen, traffic is commerce, and so these are the things that we gotta do. But when the people are involved, more so than just leaving it up to the same parties to investigate themselves, you get a different result. I think that it's our job to guide the people based on the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and freedom and liberty as the guiding light to say, okay, how are we serving Americans best? When you're talking about education and teachers unions, is this teacher doing the job of creating curriculum and supporting curriculum, or the school system that is going to empower young Americans for the things that they need to strengthen themselves individually, their families, in their communities, and then America as a whole? The teachers that are doing that, let's incentivize it. Let's give them raises. Why can't there be teachers getting 100 racks a year? Not just professors pushing leftist, drivel, but the people have to be involved in that to hold those agencies accountable. If not, like you said, it'll just be more of, okay, we got rid of the one person. But yeah, the one person is the one person that got caught. If the entire structure of it is bad, or 70% of the structure is bad, you got to get rid of that structure and replace it with something that serves the people better. I think that things like school choice, getting rid of those police unions, because to the people that are listening that aren't aware, what happens when a police officer gets caught being a bad guy, right? He may catch charges. He may get put on administrative pay leave. The unions go, like you said, they circle the wagons and go, oh, you can't, we got to have, and okay, cool. I'm not mad at unions when they are organizing to make sure that the pay is fair for its constituents. I'm not mad at that on that level. But when there's clear-cut violations of other Americans' rights, property, and or their life in a lot of these cases, the union needs to fall back. And if they're not falling back for the same type of status loyalty, that's not most productive for the people. And I think that a simple, it may seem complicated, but a simple conversation like the one that we're having right now, and creating just simple structural things that, hey, are we all agreeing that this is the best for the people? Are we agreeing that, if officers know the community that they're policing, they're less likely to brutalize somebody that they know or they live close to? Okay, if that's the case, then okay, we'll get back to peace officers as opposed to law enforcement. Will most people agree that that is something that's most beneficial for these communities? Will that benefit police community interactions? And if overwhelmingly it is, and if that answer is yes, then that's the direction that we go. But if you have unions that are doing things to hide the bad apples, or just put them in a different department, or switch them to a different precinct, that does not serve the people, the Constitution, and liberty at whole. So the answer and the solutions are very, very simple in that regard.
It's always the government protecting the government from the things that the government did. Right. And they rearrange deck chairs. But I feel like bad bureaucrats, whether they're police or anything else, they never get fired. They just get transferred to some place that is less noticeable. I want to get through a couple more issues, and then I want to talk about the future, because I love your positive outlook on. I mean, this whole thing right now is a total shit show, right? The world is on fire, and it's one thing after another, and I worry. I may be more critical of the violence and looting that you are, because I think it empowers the worst instincts in the Republican Party and Conservative Party. The Tom Cottons of the world, instead of the Thomas Massies of the world, instead of the Rand Pauls. So I worry, like Dr. King said, that violence begets violence, and if you don't succeed with what you're trying to do, we may actually get more radical policing, more militarization, and we got to make sure we don't do that. And I just want to bring that up, because I know Rand Paul has worked on this. All of these wars that mostly Republicans, but Obama did it too. And one thing I would say about Trump is he hasn't started a new major war, and I think that's a really big deal. But we have this huge war economy and all of these government contractors that make all of this war gear, and the federal government gives it to state and local police departments, and really incentivizes them to go out and find something to use it with. We got to shut off the spigot. We're spending too much money making war machines, and now we're turning them on our own people.
Right. I think that one of the biggest things that I noticed about the Trump administration was when he did not want, at the time, Sec Def Mattis to continue on into, I think it was Syria, if I'm not mistaken, right? And, Mattis resigned. And it's like, I like the personality of Mattis. I'm an aggressive dude, so it's like his quotes are legendary to me. Like, yeah, always keep a knife just in case you have to kill somebody. Like, and there may be cake. You know what I'm saying? So like, it's like always. I think that's funny, but I'm from an environment where the price of life is cheap, so it's unfortunate, but it's normalized to me, right, or to some of my friends. So like, meanwhile, you know, guys like leadership, the current leadership of the Libertarian National Party is actually courting a known warmonger like Mattis. And I like him at his personality, but his policies are, hey, I'm here to kill shit. Like, and make no qualms about it. I like that type of person when we are provoked. When someone tries to attack me, I am going to try to beat them until I break my hands. That's what's going to happen. I'm okay with that. But I am never going to initiate an act of aggression towards anyone. With that being the case, the level of warmongering and profiting to justify our own existence or this business, it is unequivocally wrong. It is wrong. It's wrong. It's like the block. It's like we've talked before. I used to rob people. And it's like my justification was, oh, well, they are selling drugs. Well, yeah, you didn't look at the whole, that's commerce. Like, you're not robbing like the cigar shop or the liquor store. Like, they're selling drugs too. Or you didn't rob the Domino sugar factory. Like, sugar is like the most addictive substance. Like, that's it. So you justified it. I justified it. We as a nation and our quote unquote leadership has justified it because some of those people have gotten kickbacks for justifying it. You know, hey, we need like 18 new such and such at $20 million a piece. No, we don't. Now you got all of this stuff, then the shit rolls downhill. So now the over militarization of the police force, hey guys, you get our 2018 models of like tanks. You know what I'm saying? We got the 2021s coming on pike. We're gonna like incentivize cities and states to take this stuff and then deal with the American people as enemy combatants. You know, it's like super duper simple, but we just have to stop like calling it what it is. I'm appreciative that, the current administration has not put us, and I was nervous a few times, but has not put us into a major war or conflict. I'm appreciative of that. I'll highlight that. But we also have to, shift the conversation. But we have more power in that as the people. Like, again, going back to, Rand Paul, who I've met, have great respect for. His father, who I haven't met yet, but have great respect for. Thomas Massie, who I know, have great respect for. Shouts to him for even coming to like lend energy to my campaign and fundraising. We can change some of that by making it be very lucrative to be on that. If these guys are getting hundreds of millions of dollars towards their campaign and they're principled, other guys that may not be as principled will follow suit. You just got to follow the money, because the politicians are definitely going to follow the money. The reason why Thomas Massie, when being attacked by President Trump for standing up against that socialism, right? The reason why he wasn't canceled in this cancel culture, because he's built up a level of principle that cannot be questioned. It's based on his track record. It's not based on like he looks cool with glasses, or he's got like the curly hair thing going on, or he like lives in like a shire. These are dope things too. You know what I'm saying? However, it's based on his track record and standing up for liberty. We have to incentivize people to follow that. If you are not liberty-based, if you are not about the Constitution, you are lame. Girls should not sleep with you. No, you should get no trim. Like it should not happen. You should get all of the money. You should live like a rock star for supporting the Constitution. The reason why people gave $300,000 to Black Guns Matter is because we are based in serving the people. We are based in the trifecta, the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, for the hood. I did it with tattoos, beard, locks, being completely myself, being articulate, but still not being afraid to cuss, being authentically myself. And when people are doing that in alignment with liberty, like the few people in the swamp that are, even with every single deck stacked against them, they are literally in the swamp. It is a cesspool. We have to show up for them like they're showing up for us. And then you'll start to see that. Then you'll start to see people pay attention to that bill, listen to that person. And we just got to do more. I want to be, I know I'm going on a ramble, but I'm very passionate about this. I know that you all listening have been supportive and do your part for liberty. And I'm not knocking that. I'm saying, based on how we're going right now, we're at a precipice of like the Soros, Bill Gates, we're like 19, like we're like 2 steps away from like 1984 out here. You know what I'm saying? If not one step. We must do more to champion the people that are championing for our liberties. We have to.
I'm not going to mess with that closer because I feel like that was pure fire. How do we get more Maj Toure, and how do we learn about Black Guns Matter?
Yeah, you guys can contact me on any form of social media. It's me. I don't have people. I'm like the people that people say. I'll introduce you to my people. I'm like the person, the people. So at Maj Toure on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, MAJTOURE. On Facebook, please follow official Black Guns Matter _ Maj Toure. You can message me there. And if you agree with anything that we're discussing today, man, the work that we do with Black Guns Matter and educating and training beginners about the Second Amendment, conflict resolution, de-escalation, and political education, right? And these basic firearm safety classes and training classes, we give them for free to the people, but these classes are not free. We do that by your donations. This is voluntarism. Like, we didn't tax anybody. We didn't like send the IRS goons to take it out of your check. We just asking like, yo, if you want to help, donate. If you want to do that, because these things that we're talking about right now are things that we discuss in all of our firearm safety classes, in addition to the other things that I mentioned. But please, 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 everybody, donate $10. All you rich dudes, you rich rhinos that don't want to be rhinos anymore, this is your step. Donating is a step in the direction of not being as rhino-ish. So in all fairness, you know, we are trying to get to the same place. And if you think that the areas that are underserved in that regard is the Second Amendment and education, if you want to help us out with that work, donate to our GoFundMe, GoFundMe.com / Black Guns Matter, and just get some merch like this. You know, if it's too socialism for you to just straight up donate, cool, buy something. Capitalism is a thing. Get some merch. That's blackgunsmatter.myshopify.com, and all of those areas. Or if you follow me on any of those platforms, at Maj Toure, if you miss anything that I just said, just follow me, DM me. I'm really, really down to earth, and you know, I'll connect with you.
Okay, that's your pitch, and thanks again for taking the time. This is a great conversation.
No doubt. Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Hold it down in DC. I heard y'all gonna get out of jail pretty soon over there.
maybe someday it'll be legal to go outside again. I don't know.
Right, for sure.
Thanks for watching Kibbe on Liberty. By now, you know this is the most important event of your week. So make sure you subscribe on YouTube. Click the little bell so you get notifications. Kibbe on Liberty, mostly honest conversations with mostly interesting people.